Good Thursday, everyone. Welcome to the Blue Water Climate Control Volquest.com podcast, Season Rewind, final installment of the Season Rewind as we take a look at Tennessee's win in the Tax Slayer Bowl over Indiana. Again, check out our friends at Blue Water Climate Control. You can visit them online at bluewaterclimatecontrol.com or check them out on Twitter at Blue H2O_climate. Tennessee beats Indiana in this game 23-22. The onside kick remains a thing of beauty. We'll get to that in just a bit. But outside of that and a couple of dump over the middles to Eric Gray, there was a whole lot of not pretty in this game for Tennessee. Rob, I'll start with you. Golden opportunities out of the gate for Tennessee. Couldn't take advantage of them. Ugly, ugly red zone offense all night long.
Yeah, I mean, inside the 10 3 times in the first half, maybe almost inside the 5, and you come away with 6 points. You could have had 21 or 17 there. Very nearly came back to haunt you. But as bad as Tennessee was offensively and in the red zone for the first 3 quarters, and I remember this, seeing it again, I thought really good on defense for the most part. Had one bust maybe on a deep ball, obviously had trouble containing the quarterback run, but outside of, just kind of the improvised quarterback scrambles, Tennessee got good pressure all night, held Indiana to 76 yards rushing, and 54 of that, was from the quarterback, most of that on, not designed. So I thought they were really solid. But, and Jesse, you just mentioned this, so you can segue into it. But this game in a nutshell is what drives Tennessee fans crazy about JG. And he's all over the board for the first 3 quarters, 2 really bad interceptions. And then the fourth quarter, he kind of saves them.
Yeah, I mean, I thought he missed at least 4 touchdowns, in this game. And you go back and rewatch it. And part of, I think, again, doing this whole exercise is to spin it forward. What do we, see that projects to 2020? And Hubs has been beating this drum throughout this entire season rewind series. But I think this is probably as good of an example as any in terms of the concerns that Tennessee and Jim Chaney and Jeremy Pruitt have about their quarterback position. When the throws become the toughest, and that's what the red zone is. That's when the windows are smaller. That's when it's about anticipation. That's when it's about knowing where you go. JG just gets caught guessing multiple times in this game. Indiana probably dropped 3 or 4 interceptions. I mean, right, Hubs? I mean, now Brian Maurer had 2 of those, which we can talk about that too, which is why there's not a lot of faith in the guys behind him, not knowing what we don't know yet about Harrison Bailey. But, JG just – the pick 6 was inexplicable. He sacked himself once. He had the whole thing where he throws behind the line of scrimmage, short of this line of scrimmage on 3rd and long. That was it's just things that a veteran quarterback should not be doing in the last game of the season. And it's one of the reasons why, as much optimism as there is about this Tennessee team, I think, entering this 2020 year because of all that it does return, quarterback is always, and it is the biggest, question mark for this team.
Well, you got what you guys just hit on. Rob hit on the defense. I mean, think about it. Indiana didn't cross midfield till late in the first half. And when they did so, it was on the, it was behind, mistakes by the quarterback, which is what Jesse just touched on. I mean, literally, JG, he really kind of breathed life into Indiana, to give them – because really Tennessee outplayed them up and down the field in the first half, even though they were playing sloppy as could be. But he kept Indiana in the game with those poor decisions, those poor throws. And you're right, Tennessee gets away with it in the end. But, I mean, the game was kind of a microcosm of the whole year. How much the defense improved from year 1 to year 2 and the inconsistencies of Jared Garantano.
And to that – I was just going to say, just to that point, this game was, I think, a microcosm of Tennessee's entire season. I kind of wrote about it in my Upon Further Review when I kind of pulled that back up while I was watching the rewind. And I had this stat that I tweeted after the game. And I just think it bears repeating because, everyone talks about, Tennessee should have won, 9 games because of BYU or whatever. But ultimately, the craziness just kind of evened out. I mean, they had a 99% win probability in that BYU game, and they lost it. And yet in this game, they became the first team in all of college football to rally from 2 touchdowns in less than 5 minutes when the rest of FBS, according to ESPN Stats Inc., were 0-471. So it was pretty incredible that the onside kick spurred this comeback and that Tennessee, again, in both these games, I think they probably outplayed their opponent. But it's not always about the box score. It's about the final, score up on the scoreboard. And this one, Tennessee did enough to win because of some of the things they did defensively, I think, early on.
All right, let me circle back to this before we talk about a couple of other individuals on defense, and obviously we'll get into the decision, onside kick, and all that. Spinning it forward, if you're Jim Chaney, and Rob, I'll start with you, and you're doing your deep dive in this off season about what you are, who you're going to be, what is your answer in the red zone? What do you do? Because I'm sitting here in the Quavaris Crouch touchdown. Play worked, okay? Other than the one fumble earlier in the year where they mishandled the exchange, that play hasn't really been stopped in a short yardage situation very much. If you're Jim Chaney, what is your – he's got to find some kind of identity, in my opinion, in the red zone. You don't throw it 4 times in a row on your first trip down there like they did in this Indiana game. Yes, you got to complete some balls in there, but they've got to find something to hang their hat on inside the 10-yard line, in my opinion, moving forward, or this team is going to come up short in some critical situations when they've got to make a play.
Well, I think if you're Jim, your first hope is that your fifth-year senior quarterback in the system for the second year is better able to anticipate some things, make better decisions down there. The downside is you're losing 2 tremendous playmakers in the red zone in Jennings and Callaway, which we've talked about a lot. So, first off, you hope you get better play at the QB spot. But I'm with you. You can't get down there and throw it 4 times. I got to think the offensive line is improved. I don't know about drastically improved, but you've got all those pieces back. You've got guys who were true freshmen last year who got tons of experience. I think Tennessee will be capable of being more physical, not just in the red zone, but overall. But it's tough to run it. It's tough to run it in down there. I think you've got to get better play at the quarterback position. It's tough to be on the 8, run it 4 times, and score against good SEC defenses.
Another thing, spinning it forward, Hubs, and this isn't particular just to the red zone, but, Austin Pope goes out early in this game, and for the next 2.5 quarters, really Tennessee could not run the ball. And it just, again, I think illustrates how important he is for this offense as kind of an X factor, especially because there is no safety net behind him this year. DWA was at least serviceable, and at times maybe even a little bit better than that, as a run blocker, as a senior. Whereas it's unknown. Is Princeton Fant big enough? Is Jordan Allen actually going to stick there? And this is talking about, a guy in Austin Pope as well as he played last year. We all know he's dealt with a slew of injuries since coming to Tennessee. So keeping that man healthy, that's going to be, I think, one of the it's not going to be like a thing that's going to be plastered on a lot of headlines, because it's not something I think the casual fan thinks about. But when you really get into like the granular of what I think that has made this offense work when it has worked, 81 was on the field.
Yeah, no doubt about that. And
maybe Tennessee should hope that the season doesn't start till January and then add Miles Campbell and Hudson Wolf to a January start.
Well, that's obviously not going to happen. But maybe this is Jameer Johnson. In certain situations, you're probably tipping your hand with some of that stuff. But I think you're going to have to be creative in that. I did think a positive takeaway from this, Austin, was Ramel Keaton. When you talk about what Tennessee's losing with Jennings and with Callaway, and obviously Jennings did not play in the first half of this game, but Ramel Keaton made a couple of plays, contested the ball down the field on a contested throw, made a play there. That's he's got to build off that, but I think there's a sign of hope. That there's some help there at the wide receiver position, and obviously they've got to have freshmen to go with that. But I thought Keaton was good in this game.
Well, yeah, because you don't know what you're going to get out of D'Angelo Gibbs, and frankly, you don't know what you're going to get out of any of these freshmen. They all may be, phenomenal, but you don't know that, and you've at least seen the sparks, the flicker from Ramel Keaton, who at times last year looked like he was going to, take that next step, and then we kind of regress a little bit, or just kind of, disappear. And then would show back up. I think Ramel Keaton's got a lot of game on him. I think he is, filling out. His body is going to only get better with time. But, you hope, and I think if you're a Tennessee fan, if you're a Tennessee coach, you hope Ramel Keaton really steps forward and becomes a realistic option and a consistent option. Not a guy that, catches a nice dime by JG every now and again, but one that every week you can count on to go alongside Josh Palmer.
Yeah, I mean, Ramel had more catches in this game than he'd had the entire season combined. I mean, this was legitimately his coming out party. And to Hubbs' point, can he build on it?
I was going to say he looked exactly to me kind of like just the poster child for what you want to see from a true freshman who didn't get to play a lot, then got 15 bowl practices and showed up and made a couple plays in the bowl game.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, Rob. The other thing, too, I like what Jalen McCullough did at times in this game. He wasn't perfect, obviously, but I thought he did some good things both in the run game. I thought his coverage skills were a little bit better here in this game, which is an encouraging sign. And I know we've talked about this a bunch, but in rewatching this game, Henry To'oTo'o's diagnosis of plays, beyond run game plays, really good in this. I mean,
he wasn't a freshman by this point, I mean,
he wasn't, and he'd been good all year long. But in this game, I thought you saw him. And Indiana's not the fastest team in the country by any means, but I thought his diagnosis of plays in open field in the passing game and some of their over the middle stuff really showed a lot of the progression that he had made throughout the year. The Kentucky game, diagnosis in the run game was pretty obvious, but I thought this game showed his ability to see the entire field in covering the pass game in this game better than he had certainly early in the year, and really better than he had in the middle part of the season as well.
Another bright spot when you're looking at next year at a place where somebody's got to step up. I thought Kevon Bennett maybe played his best game in this game. He flashed pretty consistently.
Well, and I thought Indiana's tackles were bad. They were bad in this game for a good half of football. They got him some help in the second half, but for a half of football, that they couldn't do anything with Darrell Taylor or Kevon Bennett. I didn't think. I thought their tackle play was really subpar in the first half, which is why Tennessee should have had the big lead and did not have the big lead at the end.
Yeah, I mean, outside of maybe and at times kind of losing the team, those guys play well. I think we'd be remiss if we didn't. I've been a guy that's pumped up Chandler, about this series because I think he's an underrated guy. He was fantastic in this game. I mean, he and Allante Taylor basically held one of the best wide receivers in the Big Ten in WAP, with one catch and in a negative 7 yard. Bennett made the big play on the reverse. Allante had a lot of up and down moments in this 2019 season, but he at least capped it with a strong performance in the bowl game, something that he could possibly build upon. He'd been splitting a lot of time with Kenneth George, throughout the latter half of the season. George did not play a lot in this game. They stick with Allante out there, Bryce, and then obviously Sham on the inside. And heading into this fall, I think that's, probably the odds-on favorite for those three guys, but I wouldn't sure of really becoming a factor. It's certainly in some sort of rotation.
Well, I mean, for Allante, we talked about this last week. I mean, he really kind of started to find confidence again the last 2-3 games. And you're right, probably his best game of the year ends the season here. But, again, I thought he started to really kind of show some of that confidence that you expect from Allante, the last couple of games of the regular season. So, to me, like, you're right, he caps it, but he was building to this point, I thought, those last few games of the regular season.
Yeah, I thought the Vanderbilt game and this game were two of his better played football games, particularly down the stretch after he had been so up and down for a month or so where he was really splitting time with Kenneth George. Let me ask this. The onside kick, best executed play of the year for Tennessee? Look, they had some individuals go make better plays. I'm not saying that, but from a schematic execution standpoint, I think you can argue that may be the Tennessee's best executed play all season long.
It was perfect. I mean, from Paxton's, from the kick to where Eric Gray, called it at the perfect spot, and talking about catching Indiana just completely flat-footed. I know that there was a lot of talk about that after the game amongst the media, but yeah, I mean, you almost wonder if Jeremy, if they do line up in safe formation where they're expected, you almost wonder if Jeremy, does it there, because Tennessee's still got 3 timeouts with just under 4 minutes to play.
Yeah, I thought it was a terrific decision and terrific execution. And again, I think, Austin, it's a continued sign of growth and a football team finding a way. We talked about that, in the Kentucky game, and we talked about that in some other games down the stretch where Tennessee found a way. Tennessee had to go make a play, and they went and made a play and went and won, but because of the play that they made. I think that's a clear sign of growth. Now, look, Brandon Kennedy had a snap infraction, and there were clock management disasters at the end of that deal. But when they had to go make a play
And
to
at
get the
halftime.
game, when they had to go make a play to get the game, they went and made a play there.
Well, we had Zach Azzani on for the 2016 look back at the Georgia game. And, I think a lot of times, some of your best moments happen when coaches trust other coaches. Jeremy put trust in Kevin Scherer, who wanted to call that onside kick. It worked. And, trusting one of your coaches, that, hey, they're giving this look that we worked on this. Let's go execute it. Much like, Zeke talking Butch into calling the timeout in 2016 and then switching the wide receivers on the formation. Proved pivotal.
Yep, it certainly did with that. Plenty to learn, though, for Tennessee in this game. I mean, good things, Jesse. Certainly some young players make plays. Some veterans didn't play particularly well. Tennessee's got to close out the game. They were really bad the final 5 minutes of the first half, first 5 minutes of the second half, where they had been really good early in the year, did not play the middle third of the game particularly well. So good to get a win, but still plenty to grow from out of this game if you're Tennessee.
Yeah, I think some of my lasting takeaways, we all discussed this. I remember this kind of vividly post-game in the bowels of the stadium. You have to wait forever after these teams win these bowl games, and it's a mass – it's chaos in terms of trying to get, access, talking to people, which press conference are you in, talking to the players outside the locker room. But, Trey Smith running around with the flag after the game, and then even some of his comments, I think, my intuition afterwards, after talking to him, was like, man, it kind of seems like, he may be packing his bags and headed to the NFL. What a boost, obviously, that Tennessee's going to get back, a likely first-round draft pick. Again, we've harped on that before, but I think this, especially when you kind of cap the season and reliving that moment, it certainly seemed like Trey was done. The other thing is, for, again, as much optimism as there is about Tennessee's chances to maybe take a leap, this is still going to be a team, I think, that, is going to play with a very small margin for error. And that middle eight, the last 4 minutes of the first half, first 4 minutes of the second half, Tennessee was terrible in this game, and it almost cost them. It was literally almost the reason why they lost the game. Now, they tried to squander it again with some time management in the last couple minutes, but it was that chunk of plays, the JG interception. Indiana kind of shot its own self in the foot by not getting a touchdown, calling a timeout there at the end of the first half. But then what happened, to start the second half? Tennessee has got to avoid those sort of pitfalls this fall, especially, in games that they are expected to win against the Missouris, the Kentuckys, and the South Carolinas, because that's an easy way to get upset, when you kind of take your foot off the gas before halftime or come out sluggish in the second half, because it literally almost cost them in this bowl game.
As we wrap it up and head out the gate here, last thing that I want to ask you guys, and then we'll put the bow tie on this season rewind podcast. As you've gone back and watched 13 games of this team, Austin, I'll start with you. What's your biggest takeaway from Tennessee for the 2019 season as you've rewatched it?
They never quit. Yeah, you could have laid down multiple times early in the year. And a bunch of kids that had been through some just crappy situations and crappy circumstances that could have laid down almost every week there for the first 5 or 6 weeks, decided not to. They decided to keep fighting. And the staff, even the guys that were gone now, they stayed in there and fought with them, and they battled hard. And, nobody predicted what was going to happen. I mean, they beat some teams that aren't very good, but these are the same teams that have been giving Tennessee fits the last 5 or 6 years. The South Carolinas, the Missouris, the Vanderbilts, they've had their way with the ball. So to kind of turn the corner in those series, if they can do that again this year, somebody said the other night, I don't remember, one of you, either on the podcast or in the chat, if Tennessee can go back to back against those same teams and maybe steal one of these other Big Four games, I mean, that, to me, that's when Tennessee football, I'm not saying it's back, but officially turns the corner and is heading downhill instead of trying to go uphill again.
Rob, what's your takeaway from rewatching 12 football games or 13 football games?
I mean, it kind of goes hand in hand with what AP said, but this is a team that learned how to win, and you could see it. I mean, just unfold before your eyes. I mean, starting with the Mississippi State game, fourth quarter, they're on their own 11-yard line, one-score game, they put it away. You see it, obviously at Kentucky, goal line stand, run the clock out. Next week at Missouri, you're in a one-score game in the fourth quarter. Defense gets a huge stop, and in this game right here, it's the complete opposite of how we saw them start the season against just showing up dead against Georgia State, blowing one they had no business blowing against BYU, and you could just like AP said, they decided not to lay down, but as opposed to just having heart and not quitting, not giving up on the year, they just figured out how to win football games. I mean, out of the 7 games they won to close the year, 5 of them could have gone either way. Easily could have gone either way.
Jesse, what about you?
Which is why I'll piggyback. I mean, I do think that they've kind of, touched on probably the biggest thesis from that season. But from, I think a bird's eye view when you rewatch these games again, what really stands out is that outside Henry T is going to be a star. He's going to be a star. Trey Smith is going to be a first-round draft pick. But so much of what happened last season and projecting it forward, what makes it, I think, the 2020 season so interesting is just how many contributions they got from random dudes each week. And so many of those guys are no longer on the roster. A lot of those guys were Butch cast-offs. Some of those guys are coming back, like the Kayvon Bennett's and the Latrell Bumpus's. And just can that translate? Can this growth with the no spring practice and the disruption because of COVID? I just kind of wonder, what that looks like this fall, because to kind of win some of these games in the way they did, it wasn't always the stars. Jawan was obviously a dude and a stud the whole time, but Tyler Bird made some plays and that helped to win Mississippi State. And there was just so many of those examples, I think, when you rewatch this season that says they're going to need some guys, some new guys, to kind of step up this fall to kind of double down on what happened.
Yeah, I'm gonna agree with all you guys. I think, Rob, I love the point you made. So many of these games down this winning stretch could have gone different ways for Tennessee, but a dude made a play. Somebody or a unit or somebody made a play for Tennessee to turn what was an ugly, ugly season around into a season that creates a lot of optimism heading into 2020. Hey, in East Tennessee, you need a reliable heating and air system designed for your home and our climate. You need a team that's trained and held to the highest of standards. You need solutions, not sales pitches. There are many companies in Tennessee, heating and air companies, but there's only one name you need to remember. That's Blue Water Climate Control, veteran-owned, family-operated. When you need a new system or a major repair, Blue Water isn't going to send out a salesperson. An air conditioning expert will visit your home. They'll lay out all the options for repairing your system if you need to, or they can replace it if you need to. That's with an affordable way of doing that. They've got all kinds of payment options for you. They're going to do what's best to improve your indoor air quality. New system, repairing your system, whatever the case, they're going to come out and find the best solution for you. So give them a call at 865-299-2290 or visit bluewaterclimatecontrol.com to make an appointment. Blue Water is an authorized dealer for American Standard Heating and Air Conditioning. For Austin Price, Jesse Simonton, and Rob Lewis, I'm Brent Hubbs. Thanks for joining us. Have a great rest of your Thursday, everybody.